Hello, 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 and welcome to another Rich Alvarez live stream. Today, another Top 5 Live. I'm joined as usual with Chris Muller.
Hello, happy 4th of July, everybody.
Today, we are going to be talking about, as you can see on the screen there, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. But Chris and I actually didn't think of this topic by ourselves. As you can see here, we had a poll on our Rich Alvarez Facebook page, which you can, of course, go to at facebook.com/rmaprod, link in the description. And it says, what should our next Top 5 Live be? And, Super Nintendo beat PS2 games by just 4%. We had quite a lot of people voting on this, and it only won by 4%, which is actually surprising. I thought Super Nintendo would have won by a larger margin. I'm also excited to talk about PS2 games in the someday eventuality that PS2 wins. But hey, if you guys want to make a difference, you got to get out there and vote on your Rich Alvarez polls. So that was very interesting to me. You can actually, if you go to RMA Prod Facebook right now, our next poll is already on there. It's between PS2 and Nintendo Switch, and I will remind you guys at the end of the video that is actually a thing. So anyways, we're talking about Super Nintendo today. Very exciting. Reminiscing about the Super Nintendo. It was a good time. It was the age in which I grew up, and it has some of the best games ever made, and that's what we're here to talk about. So, Chris, is there anything else you want to say before we deep dive into our number 5?
I'll mention just real quick. So I did not own a Super Nintendo growing up. The first console I owned was a Nintendo 64. So when I played the Super Nintendo, it was at friends' houses. And then I played a lot of these games years later when they released them on like Virtual Console or the Game Boy Advance. So this should be pretty interesting conversation, but I just wanted to mention that I played these later in life. So, yeah.
That's right. Anyways, of course, we do these live videos live. Chris, was there anything you wanted to say about the today we're doing?
Oh, I mean, I guess that it's 4th of July. Happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th of July.
I said that at the beginning of the stream.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay. I guess I didn't hear.
When you introduced me, you were like, and I'm here with Chris, and I was like, hey, happy 4th of July.
Cool. Doesn't matter when people watch this in the future, but it is uploaded on the 4th.
Independence Day. That's very important. We acknowledge that since we are American. So we'll say it again. Happy 4th of July. Happy Independence Day to all of our American viewers.
And to everyone else, have a nice normal day. Anyway, so let's get into our top 5 here. Before we do, just remember, guys, as usual, if you want your favorite Super Nintendo games included on our honorable mention list, don't forget to super chat us at any point during the show, and we will mention you by name and your game when you super chat. All right, let's get into number 5. Drum roll, please, Chris. Our number 5 is Donkey Kong Country.
Yeah.
The original Donkey Kong Country is very important for many, many reasons. And the one thing that I really want to talk about, of course, is the relationship between Nintendo and Rareware, which was an excellent relationship that lasted about 10 good years. And then, well, basically, Rareware made Donkey Kong Country, and Donkey Kong Country was an amazing leap forward in graphics and in style. Anybody who's played the original Donkey Kong Country trilogy on the Super Nintendo knows how great it is. It was just fantastic platforming, and you really utilized this interesting style of graphics that they actually, Shigeru Miyamoto was so impressed by, he tried to implement it in Yoshi's Island and only ended up using it for the cutscenes. But Rareware was great back in Rareware's heyday on the Super Nintendo and on the Nintendo 64, but then, of course, as you all know, Rareware got bought out by Microsoft, and it just hasn't quite been the same since. But this was pretty much the beginning. I say pretty much because I know Rareware did some other stuff with Nintendo, but let's face it, none of that was as important as Donkey Kong Country, am I right?
Oh, yes.
Anyways, I love Donkey Kong Country. Chris, what do you think about Donkey Kong Country?
Yeah, so here's why Donkey Kong Country is important to me. As you guys know, Banjo-Kazooie is probably my favorite video game of all time. There would be no Banjo-Kazooie if there were not a Donkey Kong Country. Donkey Kong Country is where Rareware really polished the platformer genre. Obviously, this was back in the 2D days. But the thing that's so fun about this game is you have to be very intricate with your jumps, with shooting out of the barrels, with the collectathon getting all the the bananas and the letters. This is in my opinion, this is like fast-paced 2D platforming at its finest. And it just goes to show that even way back then, Rareware was just ahead of the curve on making really, really, really good games.
Thank you, Chris. So I thought you were going to say more. I was like, I was waiting.
What else would you? Sorry, I mean, I could.
I mean, you don't have to. I'm just saying.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, if I'm going to steal some stuff from Wikipedia here, I was kind of curious about the cultural impact. And what they said is, remember, at this time, a lot of people were starting to move from the Super Nintendo to Sony's PlayStation 1. And Donkey Kong Country was so successful, it actually boosted sales of the Super Nintendo when things were starting to slow down. Because remember, this game came out at the end of 1994.
Yeah, which is crazy that two more of these games came out for the Super Nintendo too.
Yeah. So people forget how insanely popular this game was, and it really helped boost sales for the Super Nintendo at a time when Sony was starting to really like take off.
Which it's crazy to think, yeah, because the PlayStation came out in '94. It beat the N64 by 2 years. But of course, we could talk about PS1 in another video, but it didn't look great at first. It took some time for them to figure their stuff out. Anyways, we're going to go to our number 4 here. Chris, do you remember what our number 4 is?
Oh, I sure do. Would you like me to say it?
No, I'm going to say it.
Did you want to say it?
I just wanted to know if you remembered. Anyways,
I have the list open, that's how.
Our number 4 Super Nintendo game is one of my favorite games of all time. It is, of course, Final Fantasy VI, or as it was known in North America at the time, Final Fantasy III. And I'll explain really briefly, because I've explained this to death in other videos. We're actually watching a HD version, as I like to do in these videos, just so it looks nice. But anyways, Final Fantasy I originally came out in Japan in 1987. We did not get it in America till 1990 because they didn't think that a JRPG like that would be popular in America. But then they decided to port it over here anyway, and it was a success. However, by the time it was a success and they were ready to roll out a sequel, Final Fantasy IV was already about to come out in Japan, so they figured, instead of just porting Final Fantasy II over to America, let's just release, and I don't know why they did this, let's just release Final Fantasy IV in America as Final Fantasy II. So Final Fantasy IV came to North America on the Super Nintendo as Final Fantasy II. And by the way, Final Fantasy IV, it would have, if we were doing a Super Nintendo top 10 list, Final Fantasy IV also would have made this list, but it didn't, because Final Fantasy VI is just a lot better, even though I love Final Fantasy IV. But then, yeah, and then for whatever reason, they also decided not to do Final Fantasy V, and so when we got Final Fantasy VI on the Super Nintendo, it became Final Fantasy III. In everywhere else in the world, it is Final Fantasy VI. And now, when you buy it on Steam or Game Boy Advance or any of the other ports, it is Final Fantasy VI. Everybody recognizes this game as Final Fantasy VI. Has one of the best villains of all time with Kefka, and one of the best heroes of all time in Terra. And also just an incredible cast of, I think about 16 playable characters. Just an incredible game. One of the best Final Fantasies. Definitely one of the best Super Nintendo games. Chris.
So I'll say this, and this is important. I have never played a Final Fantasy game from beginning to end.
Yes.
I have. And the reason why now it's kind of funny is because I've never owned a PlayStation. Now I know that's ironic because this was on the Super Nintendo, but I also didn't own a Super Nintendo. But I will say this. I have watched Richie play quite a few Final Fantasy games, like just, the intros to the games. And I've also been on many long car rides where Richie has told me in very intricate detail the plots for all the Final Fantasy games, as well as the reasons why one would be better than the other. So I know for a while, Rich, you went back and forth on what your favorite Final Fantasy game is. You would currently consider 6 your favorite out of all the Final Fantasies, right?
I think as far as Final Fantasies go, I think I've gone a little bit back and forth. I think that when I really think about it, I think that 6 has to be my favorite based on its importance to me growing up and the fact that it still, in my opinion, has one of the coolest plots. Hey, can I spoil a 25-year-old game here?
Go ahead.
But
yeah.
In every Final Fantasy, you have bad guys. Like, people really like Sephiroth. Sephiroth is trying to take over the world. and destroy the world. He doesn't. You end up stopping him, of course. But Kefka, he does destroy the world. He does actually complete his goals. You don't stop him. He wins. It's a really cool twist. And then you and the other surviving characters in the world that is the post-apocalypse, a basically destroyed desert world. You're basically living in Mad Max in the last third of this game. The world is over, and there's pretty much nothing left to save, but you decide, you know what? There's a few survivors left. We should probably stop Kefka if the human race has any chance of returning to glory. And so it's after the bad guy already wins that you go and destroy Ultimate Kefka. It's something that they really, have, like, Final Fantasy 15 kind of tried to recreate that a little bit, but it hasn't really been done in all of its glory since Final Fantasy 6. So great story. I mean, I don't have time to talk about every character and their motivations, but just, it's fantastic. Yeah, take my word for it.
And one of the other things, of course, is Nobuo Uematsu is one of the greatest video game composers of all time. Richie, you used a lot of Final Fantasy music in Stupid Mario Bros. You probably used some song. I'm not familiar with which songs go with which game, but I would assume you probably used some Final Fantasy VI music in there, right?
I did. I've used a lot of Final Fantasy VI and another game that we'll talk about much later on this list.
Nice. And by the way, I did want to mention we did get a super chat from Hey It's Killjoy. Thank you, Killjoy, for your generous super chat of $5. We'll get to honorable mentions here in a second, so I'm going to hold off on reading what your game is, but I did want to acknowledge that you super chatted, so thank you, and we'll talk about that game in a bit.
All right, and that's another reminder for everybody. We're about to do our number 3 here, and then after our number 3, we will do our honorable mentions. So make sure and get your super chats in, and we will mention them during our honorable mentions section. All right, Chris, we are about to talk about our number 3 game. This would, as is controversial on a lot of our top lists, this would probably be a lot of people's number 1. As our number 3, and certainly one of my favorite. I mean, all these are some of my favorite games of all time. But let's roll out a big RichAlvarez welcome for our number 3, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past.
Oh boy.
And a lot of people, it's funny, even after Ocarina and Breath of the Wild and Skyward Sword and all of these other great Zelda games, a lot of people would still consider A Link to the Past their favorite Zelda game. And I admit that I too considered this my favorite Zelda game for a long time. It wasn't until, because it's really interesting. When Ocarina of Time came out, I never beat it on the N64. I got it and I played it a bit, but then I kind of got distracted with PlayStation and other games, and for whatever reason I was like, I liked Ocarina of Time, but I never really got into it the way that a lot of other people did. It wasn't actually until I met Chris back in 2005 that he when I was like, man, Final Fantasy, best games ever, and Chris was like, nope, Ocarina of Time. And so I went back and I actually played Ocarina of Time and beat it. And I was like, wow, this game is really fantastic. Anyways, that's not really related to A Link to the Past. I guess I'm just saying it was for like 10 years, I considered A Link to the Past my favorite Zelda game. And in a lot of ways, it actually still does a lot of cool things that they haven't really done until maybe Breath of the Wild, as far as plotting out your course and going through these dungeons and everything like this. And I feel like this game really set up the precedence for every other Zelda game after it, until Breath of the Wild, which did some other liberties. But anyways, Link to the Past, it's fantastic. I know that they remade it, and it looks fantastic on the Switch, but we're showing footage of the OG here because this is what I remember. Anyways, Chris, what do you have to say about A Link to the Past?
Yeah, so The Link to the Past, like Rich said, it really did kind of set the bar for what we expected out of a Zelda game. And by the way, I wanted to mention one of my favorite things about this game is this was the first Zelda game that introduced the parallel worlds, the light world and the dark world. So, the dark world really was an interesting take. Of course, we would see this theme repeated in future games like Twilight Princess and whatnot. But I really liked that idea of the parallel worlds, and also a lot of the classic music from Zelda was either remixed in this game or originally made for this game that we would then see repeat in future games. I mean, and again, this is Koji Kondo, one of the the greatest ever. This is the game that originated the Hyrule Overture. And then it had some throwbacks like Zelda's Lullaby, Ganondorf's theme, Hyrule Castle, Kakariko Village. I mean, this
I
game
mean, yeah, that's
is
the
so
funny
good
thing.
with the
I
music.
love Zelda music, and a lot of people, yeah, a lot of people give. I mean, Ocarina of Time, it has Song of Storms, but yeah, a lot of those classic Zelda themes, yeah, like Zelda's Lullaby and some other ones, they started here, and this game was a revolution in music because the original Zelda had the constant overworld theme, and then like the dungeon music and some other stuff, but really I would say that 50% of my favorite tracks from Zelda, at least, originated from this game. And oh man, it's so good. It's so good.
Very good. And by the way, I'll say this: we've been teasing this for a while. We do have a top 10 Zelda game that will not be live. It's an edited one. We're just taking our time on it to make it really good. That's going to be similar to our top 10 Mario. We really go deep on every Zelda game and talk more about this game, comparing it to the others. So if you're a Zelda fan, just keep an eye out for that. It'll
Yeah,
come out
we
eventually.
it's just those kinds of videos take a long time to edit, and it's funny because of the struggle it's taking to get that video done is what actually inspired us to do these live ones because these are way easier. But yeah, I'm glad you guys are enjoying them anyways. So before we get to our number one and our number two, we're gonna go to our honorable mentions. So guys, get your super chats in because now we're talking about honorable mentions. But before we get to your super chats, actually, no, you can super chat anytime, and as soon as you super chat, we'll mention it in our honorable mentions. That's what's for. I was gonna say Chris and I are gonna mention some honorable mentions, but anyways, I'm gonna go to a compilation video as I do of just some random Super Nintendo games while we talk about our honorable mentions. And Chris, you can mention Killjoy super chat right about now.
So Killjoy said Yoshi's Island is one of my all-time favorites. Yes, I loved Yoshi's Island. Now, again, I did not play Yoshi's Island on the Super Nintendo. I ended up playing it on the Game Boy Advance years later when Nintendo re-released a lot of those games. And that was very unique. I liked Yoshi's Island because, you were Yoshi, you threw the eggs, you had Baby Mario. That was Nintendo, as Rich said, really pushing the 2D graphics to the limit. I think that oftentimes people forget about Yoshi's Island because it almost felt like a spin-off, since the gameplay style was different than your typical Mario platformers. But I really liked it. They had the unofficial sequel, Yoshi's Story, on the 64, which was a huge favorite of mine. But yeah, and oh man, there's a song, I forget how it goes, but it's the very last overworld. There's this really cool song with like these flutes. I forget the name of it. You guys who have played it know what I'm talking about, but it had some very good music. And I'd say that is a great one. Like, definitely, if you haven't played Yoshi's Island, try and find a copy of it. And we just got another one. So
I'm going
hey,
to talk about
Killjoy.
Castlevania, but yeah.
You read that one.
Yeah,
You read
thank
that
you,
one.
Killjoy, for super chatting forward to Kaylin. Yeah, Super Castlevania 4. I was going to talk about this one anyway because I love the Castlevania series, and Super Castlevania 4, I would say it's my favorite, and for a few years it was my favorite, but then we got Symphony of the Night on the PlayStation. but yeah, Super Castlevania 4, excellent game. It's kind of a remake, sort of the original Castlevania, because
Could you quickly just explain the Castlevania series for those who have never played it? Because I've never played a Castlevania game. So quick, what's it about?
For those of you who know nothing about Castlevania and don't want to go back and play old games for some reason, go ahead and watch Castlevania on Netflix. It's basically the story, but and also is just one of the most incredible animes like ever made, and an incredible story. But anyways, long story short, Castlevania, you play as usually you play as members of a family that hunts, that their whole legacy is they hunt down vampires, and especially Dracula. So you go out, you're a Belmont. So in the first game you're Simon Belmont, and in Super Castlevania 4 you're also Simon Belmont. Again, it's kind of a remake, and you go out with your chain whip and you kill undead monsters, and eventually you fight Dracula. and it's just a really cool side-scrolling platformer, which, along with Metroid, kind of created a certain type of hunting platformer that eventually became known as a Metroidvania. Like, whenever you hear somebody talk about, oh, it's in the Metroidvania style, it's because it's in that style of like hunting platformer, which is really cool. People say Metroidvania, but I would give more credit to Castlevania than Metroid for that, honestly, especially since way more Castlevania games have used this method than the Metroid series, which, as we'll talk about in another video with Metroid Prime, went a different way. And I know Castlevania went a different way eventually, but nobody cares about those games. The Castlevania, excellent game. I love the atmosphere. I love the theme. Anything that has to do with vampires is great, except for Twilight. And it's fantastic. Chris, I know you've never played a Castlevania game, and you're probably not going to, but please watch the Castlevania cartoon on Netflix because it's awesome.
Nice. Fantastic. Well, thank you again, Killjoy and Decalen. Killjoy had mentioned in the chat that was from Decalen, and they also said good gameplay and music. Great. So, Rich, you want to read the next super chat we just got from AK?
AK talks about Mega Man X, which was kind of the beginning of the Mega Man X series, and I know that that's kind of confusing because, there's the Mega Man series, but then Mega Man X kind of started a side series of games. If you guys have never played a Mega Man game, it's kind of hard to recommend it. There's so many Mega Man games, and I don't know if people now would go back and enjoy the originals. There are some more modern ones. There's also games that are like inspired by Mega Man, and you could find a lot of independent games on Steam inspired by Mega Man. There's also the game by the original creator of Mega Man that is called something else that I can't remember. But Mega Man X, definitely one of the best Mega Man games. I really enjoy it. I think that it added a lot of dimension, for lack of a better word, to the Mega Man series. And some people actually don't like it for those reasons, but I think Mega Man X is a revolution in its own right. Man, so this, by the way, this compilation is going through every Super Nintendo game A to Z.
Oh, wow.
And some of these I totally forgot about, like Arrow the Acrobat 2.
Wow. Yeah. I just going back to Mega Man, I'll mention I never played Mega Man X. In fact, the only Mega Man game I ever played a lot of was Mega Man 64, which the music on that first level, so good. But yeah, I had very limited exposure to Mega Man, but I know that it's a beloved franchise. If Mega Man, Rich, if somebody were to play a Mega Man game, what would you say should be the first game that you would recommend as an intro to that series?
Well, it's kind of interesting because I actually really like Mega Man X, and I would recommend it, but it's not exactly the best representation of what the series is about. But I mean, I don't know, it's as good as any. Anyways, thank you, AK, for clearing that up. Mighty Number 9. That's a game that came out a couple years ago, and it's by the original creator of Mega Man, and it's supposed to be a spiritual successor to those older Mega Man games. Maybe start there. if you're going to start today.
What's the best Mega Man? Mighty Number 9.
It is, of course, divisive. Whenever a creator who loses their
ukulele, Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Chris. Thanks for spoiling my end game here.
Sorry, they did the same thing happened with Chip Challenge, by the way, too, on the Windows. Sorry, I apologize.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rich.
Those are all my talking points, Chris. But yeah, whenever a creator, because they don't work for a company anymore and the company owns the IP, they try to recreate their creation with a different title, like Mighty Number 9, and of course Yooka-Laylee is by the creators of Donkey Kong Country, the creators of Donkey Kong is Shigeru Miyamoto, but the creators of Donkey Kong Country, Rareware, and it's a lot of the same developers that did Conker's Bad Fur Day and Banjo-Kazooie. They made Yooka-Laylee, which is a throwback to those games, and I love Yooka-Laylee to death, but a lot of people don't for some reason. A lot of people don't like Mighty Number 9. It's just like people have expectations, and I don't know what people expect sometimes, but it's like people are like, Yooka-Laylee is not good. It's like, I don't know. I thought Yooka-Laylee was great, but whatever. I guess I'm crazy.
It was good. I think people did have some legitimate concerns about the controller, the gameplay. I think it was good on PC, but on Switch, for some reason, the controller was not that polished to the point where I'd be right on an edge, and it was not as crisp as, say, the 64.
Crisp.
So, Yeah, and again, Rareware formed Platonic, which was the new company that had the old Rare people. But it's funny because Rareware, as a I guess a shell of its former self, still exists, and they most recently made Sea of Thieves, which
Yeah, and I enjoy
actually is
Sea of
highly
Thieves for like 2 days, but
popular online. Yeah.
but
Anyway,
yeah, that's pretty much the only like decent thing they've done in the last 10 years was Sea of Thieves. Otherwise, can't wait for the next Platonic game. Um,
yeah. So Rich, I think next up, we and by the way, guys, if any of you have any other honorable mentions you want to throw in, Super Chat is still open and welcome. But Rich, I really want to hear your thoughts on one of the games we put on the honorable mentions list, particularly the one that should have gone in our top 5, but we didn't put in. If you know what I'm saying.
Gotcha. So a lot of you will be disappointed to know that Super Mario RPG is not on our top 5 list, and this was actually this was really hard for me because, as you guys know, when you watched our top 10 Super Mario games, that Super Mario RPG was pretty high up on that list. Super Mario RPG is one of my favorite Mario games of all time. It's one of my favorite RPGs of all time. However, I already have well, I don't know how much I can spoil here. I already have Final Fantasy 6 on this list, and I was very close to putting Final Fantasy 4 on this list, but it's not. There's another game on this list too that I won't mention yet, obviously, because I don't want to spoil the end. But I felt like putting Super Mario RPG on this list would have been a little redundant because of those games. But if we were doing a top 10 list, Super Mario RPG would have definitely been number 6 at least. But it was very close to making this list. I love Super Mario RPG, one of my favorite games of all time. Did not quite make this list, so it's in my honorable mentions. Sorry, Chris. It's like I wanted to say a little bit more, but then it would give away.
You didn't want to spoil it. No, I get it. Yeah. So we really went back and forth on putting Super Mario RPG in our top 5, and as you guys know, I'm just laughing at some of the comments here. No Super Mario RPG, unsubscribe, says at MG7. That's pretty clever. Just to echo what I said in our top 10 Mario games, one of my favorite things about this is the music. I know it's almost become a meme that I am always commenting on the music, but that one song, what's it called? The Forest, do 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 do.
Oh yeah, and there was like the Flash video or like Super Mario RPG.
Oh god, that is so good. Yeah, that's the golden era of Flash animation on Newgrounds. Somebody re-uploaded an HD remaster of that, but yeah, that whole the parody of the song is really good. But yeah, I love the music. And then also, as you guys know, I'm a huge fan of the Super Mario and Luigi or the Mario and Luigi All Stars saga, or sorry, Superstar Saga. Can't even talk right. Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga would not exist if it weren't for Super Mario RPG. Super Mario RPG created the Mario RPG franchise, and because of that, we get the the Mario and Luigi series, as well as the Paper Mario series, and then we have the upcoming Origami King. So good, so good.
So let me talk about another game that almost and maybe should have made this list, and we're talking about the original Star Fox. Now, Star Fox 64 made our top 64 games because I do believe in my heart of hearts that Star Fox 64 is the best Star Fox game and one of the best games ever made to me. The original Star Fox on the Super Nintendo, however, was revolutionary in the fact that it utilized the FX chip, which was an extra bit of slots in the cartridge port on the Super Nintendo, and it was able to utilize more power and graphics, and kind of gave us a somewhat 3D image when we played the original Star Fox. However, of course, when you play the original Star Fox today, it looks like polygonal garbage. But it was great in the day, and it was a lot of fun. However, just as a game, it's not better than Star Fox 64. It doesn't quite hold up the way I wish it would, and just ultimately is not as good as some of the other games on our list. So the original Star Fox, I just wanted to put that out there on honorable mentions. And then I got another game. I got a few more games I want to talk about. Super Street Fighter 2. There has been so many Street Fighter games, and I know what you're thinking. Isn't there only 5 Street Fighter games? But then but there are 10 versions of every sequel to Street Fighter, right? Because you got, Turbo this and Super that, and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo with Knuckles, or whatever have you. But Super Street Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo, I think it might be my favorite Street Fighter game. Definitely one of the best Super Nintendo games. It's just like when you had a friend over and you needed some, because we talk about a lot of games on this list, but there weren't a whole lot of multiplayer games on the Super Nintendo. Super Street Fighter 2 was the game that you had your friends over to play. This was, before Smash Bros. On the N64. So what you had on the Super Nintendo was Super Street Fighter 2, and it was awesome. That's all I want to say about that. Next, the other game you play with your friends on the Super Nintendo, the original Super Mario Kart, which, is good and fun, but pretty much, doesn't hold up at all because, Mario Kart 64 would end up being like the prototype for every Mario Kart game. But Mario Kart on the Super Nintendo was a lot of fun. And then I have one more honorable mention. And that is Earthbound, also known as Mother 2 to every otaku out there who knows that it's...
And I gotta say real quick, if you guys noticed this in our Gangnam Style video, Richie and I were going back and forth on whether to say Earthbound or to say Mother, and I wanted to say Earthbound, and Rich was like, nope, we're going to say Mother because that's what the true fans would say.
Well, it's interesting because they didn't release the original Mother out here until, I don't know, I believe, actually, I don't know this for sure, but I believe the original game has been ported somehow over here. But we didn't get Mother, kind of similar to the Final Fantasy stuff. They weren't sure if a JRPG would do well over here, so they never released the first one. So when Mother 2 came out here, they called it Earthbound. And a lot of people, of course, still refer to it as Earthbound. However, that when they released Mother 3 in America, they called it Mother 3. So it's really confusing because, they'll still call it Earthbound, even though the series is Mother. So yeah. I think more and more people are aware that the series is actually Mother now, but it's only like super fans that really refer to this specific game as Mother 2. But it is Earthbound / Mother 2, and just like I will never call Final Fantasy VI Final Fantasy 3 because it's Final Fantasy 6, regardless of the Americans trying to whatever it. Product it. So to me, because I am a nerdy kid, I will call it Mother 2, but I'll also call it Earthbound because I like to be relatable. So I don't know, take it out as you will.
There you go.
Anyways,
cool.
That's the end of my honorable mentions. Chris, do you have any other honorable mentions?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly Mario Kart. So I barely played Super Mario Kart, but I did when they made Mario Kart Advance. They basically like re-released every single racetrack in Mario Kart, and that was Richie, remind me if I'm correct here, but Super Mario Kart was the one where you could collect coins and you could go faster, right?
Yes.
Was that in? Yeah, which they took out of Super Mario 64, but then they added back in later to later Mario Kart games. So
yeah.
I still think that Mario Kart 64, in my opinion, is still the best of the series because of how groundbreaking the 4-player battle mode was. But there would be no Mario Kart 64 if it weren't for Super Mario Kart. Oh, and another thing, and by the way, Rich is the one that pointed this out, so I'm going to steal his idea here. Notice that every single game during this era had the word super in front of it. Super Mario RPG, Super Street Fighter, Super Mario Kart, Super Metroid. You'll notice that now the word that they're using in front of their games is new, because we have new Pokemon Snap, new Super Mario Bros. I mean, it's been a trend.
It's like blah 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 64 or blah 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 Wii, blah 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 U.
So
the Switch is really the first game where it's not using the word Switch usually, or unless like you're talking about like 1-2 Switch, but yeah, usually it's just they're using the new acronym, which or not acronym but suffix, I guess you could say. Oh, thank you EDMG7, Turtles in Time. Actually, yeah, Turtles in Time, is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game is actually really cool and really good.
Is
Thank you,
that the
ADMG7.
one?
I almost forgot.
Yeah. Now, is that the one that was also an arcade game where you could have 4 people play? Am I thinking the same one, or is that a
Hmm.
different one?
You
I
know
know there were a
what,
lot of
Chris? I don't
Teenage
want to.
Mutant
I
Ninja.
don't want to say misinformation here because I do know that there was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle arcade game. I do not know if it's the same game.
That's okay.
EDMG7 might know.
Well, I will say this. I'll just expand this to all Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games. So I don't know if that's the same one, but my nostalgia for playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games was like in the classic days of like going to Chuck E. Cheese or other arcades, like old school arcades, just putting tons and tons of quarters into whatever that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle game was, where you could have 4 people. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna trust DeKalen here. He says originally an arcade game. Okay, so we'll say
Ah,
it's probably the same one. So yes, I didn't play it on Super Nintendo, but I played the heck out of it in arcades, and man, that was a fun game. And I remember it being really hard too, probably by design, so that they could get lots of quarters. Remember, guys, you know how we're complaining about free to, or what is it, pay to play or microtransactions? Well, those came from arcades back in the day. I'd go through like a whole bag of quarters trying to get through that game. So anyway, just kind of funny how that works out. But great suggestion. That was Turtles in Time was a fun game.
all right. Well, without
Cool.
further ado, I think that's pretty much it for our honorable mentions. You guys are more than welcome to continue super chatting for honorable mentions, and we will, of course, mention you as we go. But we're going to move on to our number 2 game.
Here we go.
And of course, no Super Nintendo top list would be complete without Super Mario World.
Oh, Super Mario World. Well,
So,
go ahead, Rich.
So Super Mario World, as you guys know, or maybe you don't know if you didn't. Hey, if you haven't watched it yet, watch our top 10 Mario games. It made our number 2, and it was very close with Super Mario 64, which was our number 1. But man, Super Mario World. I mean, it's tough to. It's definitely one of my favorite games of all time. My second favorite Mario game by a very close margin. And what a revolution in platforming. I mean, now you can basically make your own Mario World levels in Mario Maker, but it's not quite the same. The level design here, although not hard, was just it's very nice. And just, it's still fun. I still have fun with this game today. It's just an incredible game. An incredible game. Chris.
Yeah, I'll repeat some of the things I said in our top 10 Mario video. One of the things I loved about this game was the hidden paths and the bonus exits. So, for example, in many of these levels, when you go through like the Haunted Mansion, there was a secret exit which would lead to, secret levels. Like I know there's the infamous or famous thing in the very first world where you get that bonus level where it just has all the level up items, and just unlocking that early on was just clutch in leveling up Mario all the way. So I really like that. I also loved at the end how there were secret shortcuts. It was like the star path, how you could like skip a lot of the game and go to the end if you knew the secret star path exits. So yeah, we said that Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo is basically the pinnacle of 2D platforming for the Mario franchise. That's when they peaked, and I don't think there will ever be a better 2D game than Super Mario World. And Rich said it so well in our game. He said it's a perfect game, and the only reason that it's not the best is because Mario 64 is more perfect, because it set the direction for this the franchise moving forward, because most games now that are Mario games are 3D games.
Yeah. It's like it's a perfect game. It's just Mario 64 is more perfect.
But yeah, I have so many good memories playing this game, both on the Super Nintendo when I was like playing at a buddy's house, and then again when I got the re-release on my Game Boy Advance, I was able to finally beat it in its entirety, and trying to 100% this game, get every single solitary secret entrance was very hard but very rewarding. And fortunately, by the time I played this, the internet was out, so I could go onto game FAQs and
The
search
internet
for the
was
stuff.
out, everyone.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, because I mean, when this game came out originally, could you? I mean, like,
I mean,
there were probably hidden forums,
in
but it wasn't
1991, we had AOL Beta.
Oh, goodness gracious. But anyway, so Super Mario World is like the crown jewel of the Super Nintendo. And oh, a quick honorable mention I did want to throw out is on the Super Nintendo, they also made Super Mario All Stars, which was the mashup of all of the games. Um, Hopefully Nintendo will release a Mario All Stars 2 where they release all of the 3D games, which is rumored for the Switch. But a lot of people ended up getting Super Mario All Stars for the Super Nintendo, and that's how they played a lot of these classic games from the NES and also the SNES. But anyway, Super Mario World, amazing game, one of the best.
Okay. Well, guys,
You see the comments of somebody who predicted.
We are about to do our number one. And again, there's a last chance for super chats. Get your honorable mentions in there. But hey, anyone who's ever heard me talk about my favorite games or ask me what my favorite game is, this will be a surprise to absolutely no one.
Dash
but
by
the desktop audio, the number one game. Actually, this could be in our top games of all time list, at least mine. But hey, the number one Super Nintendo game and my favorite video game of all time is Chrono Trigger. Again, a surprise to absolutely no one. Chrono Trigger, made by Square. And now you know why I couldn't put Super Mario RPG on this list. Because we have two games that are RPGs that are made by Square. And I thought if I put Super Mario RPG on this list, then people will just think I'm a Square junkie, which in the 90s I was. So, but Chrono Trigger, Chrono Trigger, it's really interesting because I feel like Chrono basically took everything that made Final Fantasy great, and this came after Final Fantasy VI. This game took everything that made Final Fantasy great, made it better, did these interesting, team combo things, and had this incredible overworld which kept changing depending on what time period you were in. Time travel, of course, is a huge part of this game, and things you do in one time period will affect another time period. Characters, they have great character development depending on what happens in these time periods, and it's just an incredible story with incredible characters. And I've never seen another video game utilize time travel in this meaningful of a way. The music, and this is what I was talking about, the music, I have used pretty much every Chrono Trigger track at some point or another in our videos, especially the Stupid Mario series. I love the music from Chrono Trigger. It's amazing. It is my favorite game. I mean, I could gush about it for forever, but Chris, why don't you say something?
Yeah, so I have never played this game, but I will have you know, I have watched the MatPat videos on this, the game theory videos about Chrono being divine, and then also the time travel, so I'm aware of that. Richie also made a really good video. Rich, I know you made a video about Chrono Trigger. Was that a Wiki Richie, or was that a Rich vlog, or was that a RichAlvarez show?
That was a video game talk before Video Game Talk. I mean, Video Game Talk has evolved, and now we don't do it anymore. But Video Game Talk used to be basically my game theory videos. Like, it was basically, they were made kind of like a game theory video where I would just basically talk about a video game with edited footage. Before Video Game Talk evolved into a talk show, and now it doesn't exist at all. But yeah, it was a Video Game Talk on Chrono Trigger, and I did talk quite a bit about it. But I mean, yeah, anybody who knows me knows that Chrono Trigger is my favorite game of all time. And, it's like when everybody in the world is waiting years for Square to remake Final Fantasy VII, I'm in the corner going like, how about you remake Chrono Trigger?
So, Rich, is it possible to briefly explain the plot to someone who's never played it or isn't familiar with it?
So Luca, who is actually the girl on screen at the moment that I'm talking here, she's an inventor. Her and her father create a time machine for I don't know why they thought it was a good idea to premiere it at a local festival. So Chrono wakes up at the beginning of the game and you go to the fair. and it's all these little fun attractions. You can actually interact with all the attractions at the fair. Not important, but you go to Luca's time travel machine, and it works, of course, and it sends Chrono back into not the prehistoric age. I think the first time period you start out is medieval, and you take this girl you meet at the fair there, and she looks just like the princess of that time. So the people think that she's the missing princess, and it starts this chain reaction where because the princess, because they went back in time and people think she's the missing princess, they never find the missing princess, which screws up time because the girl that they think is the princess starts disappearing because she's a descendant of that actual princess. And it starts a chain reaction which screws up everything anyway. And I don't know, that's all I want to say about it because the story is so good. I really don't want to spoil too much about it. Just know it has to do with, time loops and, chain reactions and time travel. I'm going to start this video over since it's at the end. But it's got a bunch of really cool stuff that it's just amazingly done.
Yeah, when time travel is done right.
Also, there's a talking sword there's a talking sword. There's a talking frog with a sword.
Yeah, I was gonna say when time travel is done right, it's pretty good. Anyway, real quickly. We got another super chat from Andrew Sosa, who super chatted $2 and said, "Hey guys, will YouTube news come back? Love ya, heart." So as a few people mentioned in the comments, Matt, who of course was one of the main characters of YouTube News, lives very far away from us now. But I actually had an idea. I'll just float this out there to Rich and also to the fans. We could try and do a YouTube News live, assuming that you were okay with it, Rich, and Matt was interested, and that was something the fans wanted. But maybe someday, so I had an idea. I'll just float it out, and again, I'm thinking out loud here. But what we could do, Rich, is we could get in our costumes. We could do something through like StreamYard, like Matt does for his live streams, and we could actually have a scripted episode of YouTube News, and then just read through our lines in real time. And then when we're done, we could do fan questions. That's the only way that I could even think we could possibly do YouTube News. Try it live. I don't know if it would lose the fast-paced charm of an edited video, but that would be about the closest we could get to do it. So I had that idea. The other idea is if doing a YouTube News live is not doable, you and me and Matt could also just do a live stream where we watch some of our favorite episodes of YouTube News and then just reminisce about it. But anyway, just kind of thinking out loud here. I know that YouTube News was a favorite, and since Matt doesn't live here anymore, we can't really do them in person. But anyway, what do you think about that, Rich?
I think that might be possible. I think that we might lose some of the charm of it, but I'll be thinking about ways to maybe make that happen. No promises.
yeah, it's hard to take an edited video and turn it into a live stream. Actually, so there's an event coming up, Richie, on July 13th. Would you be okay if I announced that, or should I keep that secret?
Go ahead. I think is this pretty much it? I think I have talked about Chrono Trigger, and guys, I will probably make an updated video of Chrono Trigger as well. I have so much to say about Chrono Trigger, but now's not exactly the time. That was our list. Chris, what were you gonna say?
Yeah. Okay. So July 13th is the 14-year anniversary of the RichAlvarez channel.
That's right.
We have an idea. We're going to try and do it on Monday the 13th. We may have to move it to another day because we need everybody to be available. But the goal is that me and Richie and Matt are going to do, in celebration of our 14-year anniversary of the channel on YouTube, we're going to do a top 5 live of the best RichAlvarez videos. So basically, me and Richie and Matt will pick, our favorite videos. We'll have them playing in the background, probably on mute, and then it'll just be us doing a super nostalgia trip of our favorite RichAlvarez videos over the years. So we'll try and announce that one in advance once we confirm with Matt what time works best for him, and we get a time locked in. So we'll announce that so you guys can adjust your calendars and try and be available then, since obviously that would be a really special a special one. But anyway, let us know if you guys like that idea, because I think that would be kind of neat. Because I really enjoyed Matt jumping in on the live stream last time when we were talking about GameCube games. So it'll be fun to just hear him, quote the quotes that I forgot, and we can all just reminisce about some of the good old days.
Yeah, that'll basically be the same format as our other top 5 videos, except we'll be talking about RichAlvarez videos, and I usually put a compilation of games or whatever before our number 2. I'm just gonna play this Super Mario Super Summer compilation I did for that.
That's actually a really good idea,
but
because that is a compilation of a bunch of our videos.
So yeah, be thinking
good
about
idea.
what your favorite RichAlvarez video, because that will be obviously what the honorable mention / super chat is for that video. That'll be Monday the 13th.
We're going to say Monday the 13th tentatively. And the reason I'm saying tentatively is because obviously it's more important that we get me, Rich, and Matt than it is to do it on the actual day. So we're going to try and do it on Monday the 13th. But hypothetically, if Matt's like, hey, Sunday works better or Saturday works better, we might do it a couple days early. But we'll try. Yeah. We'll try and do it on the 13th just because
we'll try to keep it a couple of days away from our other top 5 live video, which our next one will be. By the way, go to facebook.com/RMAprod. The link is in the description below. The new poll is already on there. It says, congratulations to everybody who voted for Super Nintendo, but what do you want our next top 5 live to be? And it's going to be between the PS2 again and the Nintendo Switch. We have a feeling the Nintendo Switch will win, but please give some love to the PS2, because I have a lot to talk about when it comes to PS2 games. So, but it's the votes there, guys. So remember, just go out and vote. Special thanks to Optimus here for super chatting $10, and all he says is, "I like that idea."
Yeah, I was gonna say we're not gonna read your last name, but that is funny. Optimus R, thank you, and thank you for the generous super chat, and glad to hear you like that idea of the top 5 RichAlvarez videos.
Yeah, I'm assuming he's talking about the RichAlvarez top 5 live.
Yeah, cool. Well, I guess just to wrap stuff up here, so a few things I wanted to mention. First off, thank you very much to all of our RichAlvarez members. It looks like we've got AK. Hey, it's Killjoy, Decaland, Squiggles. Am I missing anybody? I'm looking through the whole list. I think I've got all the members in here. I said Squiggles, right? Yeah. So if you guys are interested in becoming a RichAlvarez, remember basically what it does is it will give you a cool little RichAlvarez logo by your name. You also get access to some extra chat emojis. And then Rich and I are still trying to figure out some other cool perks to reward our members. Probably, I would imagine, would be some private streams just for members only. We'll kind of be coordinating that. But yeah, if you are interested in becoming a RichAlvarez member, there should just be something called join right below this video, and then you'll get the cool the cool logo by your name. And then Cody, aka Squiggles, says I will be there the 13th. He generously super chats $5. So yeah, we'll announce it in advance. I promise we'll give you guys a few days notice so that you'll be able to mark it on your calendars. And then I see, hey, it's Killjoy said commentary over the Christmas party. Yes. Yeah, that was a good one. Written by Doug, by the way. He wrote the script for that one. So that was a clever one.
Doug, a.k.a. Waluigi.
Doug, aka Waluigi. And then of course, as always, if you are not a member of our Discord, we have an invite link in the description. We like to have a good time over there. Right now it's me, Richie, Matt, Garrett, a few other people, and then a ton of fans. So if you guys want to come and hang out with us there. Sorry, Cody said it will be the 13th.
I think he's super chatting to guarantee that it'll be on the 13th.
Yes. Okay, I see what he's saying. Yeah, that's by the way, Cody, that is our goal, to make it on the 13th.
Unless Matt's not available.
Oh, sorry. Xander Brow. Xander Brow is also a RichAlvarez member. Sorry, Xander Brow. I scrolled to the top real quick and I was reading. Thank you. I'm glad that you are here as well. Xander Brow, of course, not to be forgotten. So it will be the 13th. It will be the 13th. I said it. I said it, Squiggles. it.
All right. Well, with that, I think that's about it. Thank you so much for everybody for watching another Top 5 Live. We will probably have 2 next weekend in the form of whatever wins the PS2 versus Switch, and then of course our RichAlvarez Top 5 for the 14th anniversary of the RichAlvarez channel, probably on Monday the 13th. Again, unless it doesn't work out for whatever reason. Anyways, thank you guys so much for joining us. This was a lot of fun. Check those links in the description. Anything else?
I think that's pretty much it. Come join the conversation on Discord. Thanks again, as always, for watching us, everyone. And happy Independence Day. Happy 4th of July.
All right. I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.
See ya.